Congressman Adam Schiff of California is the chair of the House Intelligence Committee. He sits on the bipartisan committee to investigate the January 6th insurrection. And his bill on presidential accountability, the Protecting Our Democracy Act, passed the House today. Congressman Schiff, first, your reaction to the D.C. Circuit Court ruling today.
Well, I think there are two things that were really significant about it. The first was how quickly they took up the case and how quickly they arrived at a decision, but also the overwhelming nature of that decision and the real invitation to the Supreme Court to allow the Court of Appeals judgment to stand. I think the courts understand that during the Trump years that he effectively played rope-a-dope. In the case of former White House counsel Don McGahn, he was able to stall for over 2 years before that official was deposed, and I don't think the courts want to allow themselves to be used that way again. So I think a very significant decision on the merits and very significant in terms of how quickly they reached that conclusion.
How significant is getting these documents to the committee's inquiry?
It's very important. Of course, we don't know all that's in there, but we have received cooperation from any number of witnesses, including, for a time, Mark Meadows. So we know some of what's in the archives, and if the rest of what's in the archives is anything like what we've received already, it's going to be very important for our committee. I'm confident we'll get it. The question is just how quickly will we get it? We are, when witnesses fail to cooperate, looking for other ways of getting the same information, and this is one very important source.
You mentioned Mark Meadows. He was cooperating, then not cooperating after he got Donald Trump mad because he told the world that Donald Trump tested positive for COVID 6 days before he told everyone, and went around 500 people, including the family members of fallen service members, possibly exposing them to COVID, and that didn't look great. So then now Trump is mad at him. He then sued, and in the lawsuit, basically makes this claim that this is not properly a legislative exercise. It says Congress has no freestanding power to issue subpoenas. Instead, investigative powers are ancillary to its legislative authority. Because of this tie between the investigative and legislative powers, Congress may only issue subpoenas that serve a valid legislative purpose. Today's circuit court ruling seems to put a stake through that argument.
It really does, and it's an absurd argument to begin with, and made more absurd by the fact that it's made by a former member of Congress, basically saying Congress has no legislative, no proper purpose in investigating an attack on Congress or in trying to determine what steps should be taken to protect the Congress going forward or to protect our democracy. I can't imagine, frankly, a worse argument when it comes to Congress's power of oversight and power to legislate. But there you are. Meadows has to tie himself in knots because he came in, he provided lots of documents, some of them very revealing, and now he's trying to claim that he can't testify because his testimony would be privileged, even as to documents which he admits are not privileged, even as to comments he makes in his book, which he has to admit are not privileged. So, look, they're going to throw everything against the wall. So far, the courts are rejecting that approach.
An interesting figure named Ali Alexander, who's one of the self-described organizers of the Stop the Steal movement and the rally on January 6th. I want to play a little bit of sound from him today because he did appear today and cooperate, and then get your reactions to whether his cooperation is sufficient being done in good faith. Take a listen.
I was the person who came up with the January 6th idea with Congressman Gosar, Congressman Mo Brooks, and then Congressman Andy Biggs. We four schemed up of putting maximum pressure on Congress while they were voting so that who we couldn't lobby, we could change the hearts and the minds of Republicans who were in that body hearing our loud war from outside.
Slight correction, that's not today. That was much earlier as he described his own role in it and his, by his words, what he thought the point of the enterprise was. What is your assessment of the level of his cooperation?
Well, I think I need to reserve judgment on that. But I think the deposition that we had today, which I participated in, will be very useful for the committee and for our fact-finding process. That doesn't mean that we're going to uncritically accept everything or anything that a particular witness has to say. But often witnesses lead to very valuable evidence, sometimes when they intend to and sometimes when they don't. So I found today, and we had 4 witnesses before the committee today, to be a very important date in terms of our fact-finding process.
There's also some of the documents that Meadows turned over are coming out now, which appear to show, including a 38-slide PowerPoint, just a very explicit plan for a coup takeover of the government in violation of the will of the people.
It is staggering, but I think that's exactly what was going on. This was not some spur-of-the-moment thing. This was a concerted plan that began with laying the foundation before the election by positing that any vote counted after the election, when people were going to be relying on absentee voting because of the pandemic was somehow going to be illegitimate, and then the lies immediately following the election, and then the effort by the president to intervene with state, local elections officials and statewide officials, the frivolous litigation, culminating in, as you played that clip from Ali Alexander, this last-ditch effort to stop the joint session, to coerce the vice president into ignoring his constitutional duty. And if that failed, then this march on the Capitol, which became an act of insurrection. So this was a concerted plan. And what we are looking at, and I think the documents we received from Mr. Meadows help fill in some of the pieces in terms of the role of people in the White House, in the highest levels of our government, at the Justice Department. And we're going to assemble that complete picture, and I think we are well on our way.
Congressman Adam Schiff, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Chris.